I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to move in the discussion on item 10A up to item 5A after public participation, the 911 discussion, ahead of our executive session, so we don't have to keep anybody from the public here that wish to be here longer than need be. So I need a motion by Commissioner Baduje, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Please vote. I'd like to recognize I need a motion for approve the minutes for April 8th. Moved by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Haw. All those please vote. Thank you very much. Before public participation, I want to recognize Commissioner Sauger. He has a special distinguished guest with us today. Will you please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record? You have 5 minutes. Please make sure the microphone's on too.
Mark Sauger, Don Brown's neighbor. Okay.
Thank you.
Reason I come up today is I've always talked about her. She's one of my granddaughters. She's been all county, all state, and she was on the 2006 Cousino State Basketball Champs, and she contributed like my granddaughter Erin. And now she's got another month to go, and then she's on her way to Central Michigan for a 4-year scholarship. So come on up here, Kate. I brag about her. I know you all heard enough about her, so
we've known about her for years. All your grandkids.
Thanks.
I have sat next to your grandfather for quite a few years, and I'm going to tell you what.
Sorry about that.
I see every article, and I've even brought him a couple he didn't see. And he does talk. He's very proud of you and your sister. He's very, very proud of you, and you're a lucky girl to have your grandpa. So congratulations to you, and Central Michigan's very fortunate to have you as well. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, like I remember the day you were born. Marv was your beaming, proud grandfather.
Yeah.
And he's still beaming.
He still is. Anybody else?
Yeah, so we've heard about you all the time. We're so proud of you. Marv talks about you guys all the time, goes to a lot of your games and everything. So congratulations. So I'm just curious, so you're starting Central in September, so I'm not sure how that works, do they have a red flagging, or are you going to be right on the team right away, starting lineup, or what?
Well, actually, I leave June 21st, and then I'm there for the summer until the first week in August. I come home, and then I go back when everyone else goes back. So then hopefully we just start practicing basketball, because the whole summer is just like strength and conditioning and stuff. So not really excited for that, but.
Do you know where you're going to be at? I mean, eventually you'd like to have a goal of starting, right, being in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
So you have to work hard for that, right?
But,
I'm sorry?
I was hoping I'd start as a freshman, but I know I have to work for it, and it's not going to be given to me. So, because high school is kind of like, high school, and then college is a whole different ballgame, so I just got to prepare for that.
Yep. I had as I said before, I know the girl Madison Rostovsky, who was Miss Michigan basketball a number of years ago, and talking with her, she played at Leggett. Leggett had like 25 points a game. I said, what was the difference going from high school to college? She went to U of M. She told me in high school it was like going through cones. It was that easy. And then in college, she averaged, I think, about 8 points a game at U of M. So, But anyways, we're going to be following you. Marv's going to be letting us know what's going on. And hopefully we can make it out there for a game, too, sometime. So, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sauger, thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and thanks for making our meeting a little bit more enjoyable.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Congratulations. All right. Item 5 is public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? You have 5 minutes. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anything on the agenda? Anything on the agenda? Please come. State your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Police Commissioner Bill Dwyer from the City of Warren, and I live in Farmington Hills.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for the opportunity to just make a few remarks about the issue on the table today. And I'd like to start by just saying, really, personally, I've been in law enforcement for many years. I was the police chief in Farmington Hills for 23 years. And I also served as a county commissioner. You probably don't want to hear that, but I served as a county commissioner for 8 years in Oakland County. And I can tell you throughout those years, public safety was united along with all of the county commissioners in their efforts to support the surcharge on the table today. So I'm recommending approval. The City of Warren continues, as most cities, to experience an increase in operational costs, and local funds are always tapped, and we do have some serious budget problems. Our 911 calls are increasing at a very high level. The volume is up. We are working with our fire department, Commissioner McAdams, who's going to make a few remarks on some new technology, and those funds are needed for the new technology that the fire department is bringing forward. There's definite need across the board as far as everyone in law enforcement, public safety in Macomb County for training. We lack training funds across the board. You can talk to any fire commissioner, fire chief, police chief, and they'll tell you the same thing. We also, in the area of personnel, I don't think Warren's alone with this, that we need additional help with not only the training, but funds for technology, and also funds to really help us with our dispatchers. You know, they are the lifeline to our residents and our taxpayers. And we do need additional dispatchers. I think most cities need, in county, or most cities, or wherever you're at, needs more dispatchers. They're dedicated individuals that are truly professional, that in many cases aren't really given the credit that they deserve. I mean, they're under pressure, stress every day. It doesn't matter if you're in Warren, Roseville, Macomb County Sheriff's Department, wherever you're at. And I'm speaking from experience, being a police chief for 23 years in Farmington Hills. And again, I just want to state that I was sitting where you're sitting for 8 years as a county commissioner in Oakland County. So I'm asking for your support for the citizens of this county and for the men and women in public safety. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else, please come to the podium.
Good afternoon. I'm not as long-winded as Bill, but I'm not as articulate as Bill also. But from the fire side in the city of Warren, our call center receives about 70,000 calls, 19,000 of which are for fire.
Excuse me, can we get your name for the
Oh, I'm
record?
sorry. Wilbert Skip McAdams, Fire Commissioner, City of Warren.
Thank you.
I'm a resident of Pontiac, Michigan. Okay, I'm sorry. 70,000 calls for Warren, 19,000 of which are for fire. Obviously, money is the critical component into making investments in both manpower, technology, and the required investments to maintain state-of-the-art facilities, not only in Warren, but across Macomb County. The need is there. If this surcharge were to pass, this would bring us in line with every other county in Michigan and allow us to not only have these funds available, but they are dedicated. The local units of government cannot supplant the funds. They cannot take your dollars, which you approve, and replace local dollars. This would be an enhancement to what is the investments that are going on. In Warren, those investments would be used, much like Bill said, towards increasing staffing and dispatchers. We want to increase the number of dispatchers available to both take calls and to monitor the activities of first responders, both police and fire. That's the number one priority. Two is technology related. We've purchased EMD software that requires a more dedicated response from dispatchers, and also a QA to monitor and analyze actual run volume provided by this, ensuring that dispatchers are making the proper calls on these incidents. And then thirdly, technology. What is state-of-the-art today is yesterday's news 6 months from now. And in order to ensure that those investments continue, with those dollars that are allocated from this surcharge, coupled with local dollars, we can continue to maintain ground or catch up ground on this required investment. The PSAPs are our starting points. Without them, no first responder gets to any incident and does not mitigate a thing unless we get there. The only way we get there is with the support and guidance of the PSAP. Also, I have a letter I'd like to give to you guys, pretty much stating in writing what I would. Over this way.
You're at the mic.
Mike? Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board. Kevin Cannell, 23732 Main Street, Armada, Michigan. Also the interim chief of Armada Township. I'm here as a taxpayer and a emergency services leader in support of the 911 surcharge. That'll support, I think is important, all 9 dispatch centers in Macomb County. When we're here talking about spending tax dollars or asking for additional revenue, we have to look at the cost benefit. And I have to tell you, the low charge of this versus the cost benefit we're going to receive is, I can't think of another project that would be that have a higher cost benefit when you plug in a formula. For me, though, I could even focus in on the simulated training from the fire side. That's the most important to me. Obviously, technology and staffing is important, but as far as the dispatcher's ability to handle the low frequency, high risk situations that you just can't receive training no matter how long you're there, because it doesn't happen a whole lot. But the effects are pretty high. So I reached out to Tim Mariner. He's the NIOSH lead investigator, safety engineer for firefighter fatality investigation at a federal level. I'd like to read some email correspondence that I had with him. He emailed his other investigators, and so I apologize. I'm reading from written down emails, and it's kind of email lingo. But I think there's 3 that stood out. These are replying back to him. I think it would also be a good idea to provide examples of excellence in fire alarm dispatch operations in our investigations where the dispatch or fire alarm center was a key player. Only person to hear the mayday and relay it to the incident commander. It deserves mention that the dispatch center could provide an absolute vital service. When you have experienced, and here's another key word, trained fire person in a sterile atmosphere to assist incident command and assigned to check channel for these emergency transmissions, it is important that we highlight and provide the excellent examples regarding communications and dispatch and recognize when they're present helps fire ground communication. Another one, I think we could look at a large number of instances where we can cite dispatch issues problems, but it is also important to cite the examples of how, when things went well due to dispatch centers being on their toes and assigned a dedicated, trained, experienced dispatcher. That's another one. Too often, dispatch is an afterthought extension of a large multi-agency police, EMS, fire, public service center, and experienced fire dispatchers are not a consideration. Another one, last one, I concur with everything that has been said, but I'd like to reinforce that dispatchers with fire service background and/or supervisors, the communication flow is optimal. Knowing the lingo and being familiar with procedures is key to successful communications. Another recent example report not released yet is Long Beach, where you have an active shooter, high-stress situation. It took a while to figure out things. Even dispatchers, they ended up complaining that they weren't aware of active shooting policy, nor had they been included in the training. I think the key here is training, and I know that this will go for simulated training, which again, the low-frequency, high-risk situations, like a mayday, which is a downed or trapped firefighter, it's important. You can't get this on-the-job training. You have to have the technology to do simulated training, and I know that's where the surcharge is going. And again, it affects all dispatch centers, and I think when you look at the cost-benefit of this, it's a pretty high cost-benefit. I write grants. I've been pretty successful. I don't know of any other project that I have this high of a cost-benefit for a low cost. So again, I'm in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Bartram. I'm the Executive Director for CERISA in Roseville. I live in Richmond Township. At your last meeting, you asked what other dispatch centers might be doing with their funds if the 42-cent surcharge would pass. I'm here to answer the question as it pertains to CERISA. Basic risk management functions include that in order to be ahead of liability concerns, you must strive for continuous improvement. You've heard a couple of people here already talk about training. I want to address that specifically. You may not be aware that the state of Michigan does have training funds for our dispatch center, and that's great, but those training funds are only specific as it relates to training classes that are pre-approved with pre-authorized instructors. The training that we're talking about here, that doesn't count. And so that's really frustrating because some of the training that we have here in Macomb County that's really important to us, like Blue Card for our fire departments, and having our dispatchers in Macomb County, all of Macomb County, participate with active assailant and the fire training, those funds don't cover. They don't cover that training. So for the dispatch centers to send out the dispatchers, it's not covered. The overtime's not covered. And so that's important for you to understand when you're hearing about additional training. That low-frequency, high-risk situation training, that would be something that CERISA would use that additional 42 cents for. At our last meeting, I spoke to you about Next Generation 911. CERISA will move forward with the technology that the rest of the state of Michigan is moving forward with. We'll join the Emergency Service Network, known as ESINet or ESINet, depending on which technology person you talk to. It's already surrounding Macomb County, that ESINet is. It's a core critical task to join that, and we must strive for continuous improvement to meet the needs of the citizen and public safety responders. As I mentioned prior, technology is not a one and done. You can't just upgrade and expect that you're there. Technology requires continual improvement, learning, evaluating, and seeing where the new technology is on the horizon. We must plan for the implementation of whatever new technology we see. Not that we have to implement it as soon as we know it's there, but we have to know that it's coming. I know one of the things that's coming down the road that we can already see, there's centers implementing it in the country, is video 911. CERISA is not ready to implement video 911, but it's coming, and you have to plan for it and put that money aside, and that 42-cent surcharge, that's the kind of things you have to plan for. Vicki Welber talked about last time, having money put aside so that you can be ready for technology upgrades. CERISA will use the 42 cents to also be ready. In addition, I've evaluated our staffing needs, and with funding, we'll add the appropriate staffing to our center. Staffing that will make sure calls are answered within the acceptable time limits that's required nationally. We'll make sure our training continues to be rigorous and constant, and that we train on core critical tasks. Like was already mentioned, training for emergency medical dispatch. We are an accredited center nationally, and we want to maintain that accreditation. We want to make sure our fire department dispatchers are also trained. And we want to train on low frequency, high risk calls. Because even though it is low frequency, you don't want to be involved in one of those low frequency events and have a dispatcher not know what to do. And the last topic we discussed at the CERISA board meeting when we were discussing the 42-cent charge is after our first full year of receiving the receipts, we will evaluate the returns and determine that if any funding, we would reduce that back to our member cities. So that's what CERISA would do, because that was one of your questions that you asked at the last meeting. I think that the training aspect of what this will offer the dispatch centers and helping them be ready for technology is critical. I said that last time. I just can't really ask more for your support. This is really a low cost, a little over $5 per person for the benefit that you're offering these 9 dispatch centers. Thank you.
Thank you. Again,
Good
state your
afternoon.
name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes.
My name is Luke Bowen. I live at 39666 Edgemont in Sterling Heights in Commissioner Myjack's district. I am the operations manager for the Macomb County EMS Medical Control Authority. That is a mouthful. We oversee the operations of the 28 EMS agencies in the county from the perspective of medical direction, the protocols they use to treat patients in the field, and quality assurance, quality improvement guidance. I am here today representing our board of directors, which is an executive from each of the hospitals in and surrounding Macomb County, our executive director, Debbie Condino, and our medical director, Dr. Bonfiglio. Our interest relates specifically to the ability of the PSAP, or the Public Safety Answering Point Dispatch Center, to provide high-quality, current, and professional emergency medical dispatch services to the citizens of Macomb County and the EMS agencies that they provide the dispatch services to. The MCA maintains a protocol that requires all EMS agencies to utilize a PSAP that provides emergency medical dispatch services. An improved and guaranteed funding stream would allow EMD services to be provided more consistently and with higher quality across the county. It's often said that emergency medical dispatch is the first link in the chain of survival, allowing dispatchers to provide medical instructions to the 911 caller while providing the responding fire and EMS assets accurate information. This process requires most up-to-date computers, technology, software packages, and as mentioned before, training for the EMD dispatchers. Of further interest is the ability of dispatch centers to work together, talking about the low-frequency, high-acuity events. If there is a large-scale issue, it's important for the PSAPs to be able to interwork together, and more technology is required to do that at this time. Our belief is that the 911 surcharge being requested will help maintain all 9 PSAPs in Macomb County to upgrade their systems and maintain those systems moving forward. Also, as a resident of Macomb County, I am a tax-paying citizen residing in Sterling Heights. I look at the surcharge as a small price to pay for the assurance of high-quality and technologically sound and advanced dispatch services moving forward. In summary, we ask that you consider approval of this 911 surcharge request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else? One more. Very good.
Good afternoon. I'm Brad Kerson. I'm the Public Safety Director for Chesterfield Township. We are a small regional dispatch center that services the Township of Chesterfield and the City of New Baltimore, both police, fire, and EMS. The previous board meeting that I was at, the specific question was to what are you going to do with the funds? Our funds will be strictly dedicated towards technology increases, as you previously heard from Sarisa. The information and technology that is out there every day is ultimately changing, and it is cost dependent. Commissioner Brown, I did send you an email. I hope you dispersed it through the group from the previous meeting. Our plan for these funds, should you choose, would again be directed solely for the implementation of new technologies. Staffing is budgeted. We are at full staff, so the staffing issues is rolled into our budget. I would hope that you increase this, allow this increase to take place, and if you have any further questions, again, you reach out to us and try to answer those questions for you prior to your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Tim Duncan, Fire Chief of Clinton Township. Pretty much live throughout the county, presently reside in Harrison Township. Obviously, I'm up in support of this. We're probably one of the most recent communities that switched over to Comtech. I apologize not to be able to talk about the other dispatch centers. But all I can say is from my experience in the dozens of hours that I spent there working on our changeover, which was in the works for probably a little over 3 years, I can't tell you how exceptional the employees are that work over there. Day in and day out, we had issues that we had to take care of, and they were able to figure out answers pretty quickly. So really without them, a lot of this, what additional funding you can get is basically about retaining and keeping the people that you've got over there in place. Nothing, when we have a problem in our department, the answer is back to us exceptionally fast. I feel a lot safer with them Our fire scenes are a lot safer. Our manpower out on the streets, when they're there, they're always looking over us. So as a chief of a department, having the system like we have at Contact, which is a gem right in our own backyard, just really speaks volumes. I know that as my family lives mostly in Harrison Township, I feel a lot more comfortable having these people there looking over us. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of technological needs going forward. This has allowed us as a department with the our consolidation, which was all about consolidation amongst a lot of communities. We were able to take the additional person from our department and open up another vehicle. So our community is a lot safer because of this at this point. So there's so many aspects of this that weigh into it that the additional funding is going to go a long, long way to making, at least from what I know, Comtech to be that much more solid here in the near future. So we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else under public participation? Anybody else under public participation? Seeing no one, will close public participation. And go on to item 5B, which is the update on the request for authorization 911 surcharge. We have a Vicki Wolver. Hello, Vicki. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for providing us some updated information to some of the questions that we had previously. Do you have anything you want to say initially?
Yes, I do. I actually have some more prepared comments. One, thank you for having us back today. Thank you for moving us up on the agenda. Since we last met, there's some things we realized on our end that we probably didn't cover very well. Have had some conversations with some of the commissioners over the past week, so thank you to those of you that have reached out. So I'm going to try to summarize a lot of that in my remarks today and give you some more specific information. And I know, not even for yourselves, you're in a tough position, and we're in a tough position as presenting it in the county and the bulk of information you have, because this is a request, one, that the board needs to do county-wide. And while you have to think of all the other PSAPs, you're also obviously very much concerned with the Sheriff's Office budget and Comtech. So I'm going to try to cover both those areas a little better today. As you could tell from the speakers today, we did get your question loud and clear about the specifics of their dispatch centers. So that's why some of them were here today to speak about what they would specifically do with the funds. I'd like you to, if in your packet, if you look at page 39 of your packet, that is the sheet where we kind of gave you a synopsis and estimate of the revenue that the surcharge would bring in. And we're focusing on the 42 cents. So right now I'm going to kind of focus on some general comments county-wide and reiterate some of the things the other dispatch centers talked about. Obviously, you see the amounts that each dispatch center could receive for the 42 cents. That funding would be distributed based on population. That's how we distribute the state 911 funds that we get now, so that is our intent to continue that at least at this point in time and distribute it in the same manner. For anyone that is covered by the Sheriff's Office or Comtech, obviously we get those populations money into our center. So that's why they're not listed. Same thing with Chesterfield. They're Chesterfield and New Baltimore. Sarisa gets funding from Roseville, East Point, St. Clair Shores, and Fraser, who they cover within their dispatch centers. One of the questions that I had, and a good point, to talk about, was some things. We hear about what we're going to individually do with this money, but one of the big benefits that's come out of this, potentially, that we could do is, now that we've seen that we have this funding source coming in and what this revenue may do for us, I think it allows for a question for all of the dispatch centers to sit down and say, okay, collectively, we're anticipating that we need $3.3 million. Yes, we know we have individual needs, but in addition to those individual needs, is there anything collectively that we could do? Obviously, we're big proponents, the board has been big proponents about trying to do things as a county, if you will. Obviously, there's lots of good reasons for that. It helps save money for us on our end. end, it increases our interoperability and our standardization. So a couple of those items that have been mentioned already, but one of them is fiber connectivity that I'd like to talk about just a little more in depth. Right now, with how all of our PSAPs are connected to the phone lines, if you will, are on trunk lines or copper lines. And while they're still very reliable today, the trend is to move over to fiber. Because that's more reliable. It offers better ways to connect with one another. Fiber is one of the ways, when I talked last month, and you've heard others talk about getting photos into your dispatch center or videos or any of those live streams and that data, we really need fiber or an SENet to be able to do that. Everyone around us has started to go to fiber. It's something we've talked about. But we haven't made a final decision on as a county. And that is something that we do need to make a decision on as a county, because just like this decision with the 42 cents, we have to do that as a county. We have to update our county plan to allow all the PSAPs to do that. So there's a potential for us, again, to pull together and use that and make that decision. You've heard a lot of talk about training and how important training is. One item that we've started talks on, not everyone's been necessarily privy to those discussions, but what we've talked about is basic training or skill set or education for any dispatcher is a high school education. The majority of training that they get is on-the-job training within the dispatch center. There's also, through the college, though, there are 2 courses that are offered. There's a basic dispatcher course and then an advanced dispatcher course. However, because of funding, because there's no necessary mandates that dispatchers have that type of training, one of the things we've talked about is to enhance that training program within the county and actually create a simulation site. Within those training programs now, there's no functionality other than verbal or something written on paper that a dispatcher can actually receive a 911 call, that they can actually use a radio and get the information out for that dispatch call. I'll talk a little bit later, but for most dispatch centers, there's about 5 main computer programs that they all use that bring that information in and then disperse that information. That's not available to them in any type of training center. So what we started to talk about with the college, the county, and Sarisa and some others is, can we build a simulation site? Can we enhance that aspect of training? In addition to those 2 courses that it offers, it would also allow other dispatch centers just to send their personnel there for training off-site. They could run their own training program and get dispatchers used to being able to do that. Another advantage that we've seen is even in the police and fire academies, communications and dispatch training is a portion of those training programs. But again, as they go through that training, they may bring radios in from host agencies. We've lent out portable radios to the college before. But they really don't get that end-to-end, talking to a dispatcher, having a dispatcher respond back to an actual police or firefighter that's going through that training program. So that's something that we could potentially use these fundings for that, again, has a county-wide basis and a county-wide use. Another item that came up was at a recent training conference, as most of our departments in the county were a couple weeks ago, on active shooter. And it's a really great conference. When we go to those conferences, what we really want to learn is the mistakes from others, unfortunately. But that's how we learn and figure out, are we moving in the right direction, and what are our gaps? And one of the items that came out that I have to be honest, didn't really think of here. It came out of the unfortunate incident in Parkland. One of their items, their radio system, they have issues there. Luckily and thankfully, we do not have that problem here with different radio systems. But one of the items they talked about is because their radio system did fail and they couldn't talk to one another or hear transmissions. Granted, it was a noted gap for them. It's also a gap for us. But there are programs out there now. We all have different CAD systems or computer-aided dispatch systems where information comes into the dispatch center. Not only do they announce it verbally over the radio, they type it into the computer program and it goes out over mobile computers that are in the police cars and the fire apparatus. So we have multiple ways that they get that information. One item that they noted in Parkland was that they didn't have that CAD interface. So for them, their radios didn't work. They didn't have a CAD interface, so there was this big gap in communication. So that was one item that I took back, and I thought that might be nice down the road again as a countywide effort to use those funds potentially to connect our CAD systems. They don't have to leave their CAD system, but if we're having an event in the sheriff's office, the one system we use, we know, especially if you look at an active shooter incident or any large incident, you're going to have multiple agencies coming, not only from multiple places in the county, but also out of the county. And that could be a future endeavor that we take. Another area is physical backup dispatch center sites. As you know, through the county and with the cooperation of Warren, both of our entities now have actual physical dispatch sites. We are very fortunate to have that in the county. All the dispatch centers in the county have plans for rollover calls when they start to get busy. Those are pre-planned where their calls roll over to another dispatch center site so the calls get answered. However, what they don't have is technically what we in Warren have now, is a physical site to send their people to should their physical site have an issue. When you have the rollover calls and the busies, those are intended for short outages. Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe the dispatch center that's having an issue can send people there, but they may or may not have an actual dispatch seat for them to sit at. So some of the items we've been talking about is now that we have a backup site and Warren has a backup site, could we expand that and that capability to other dispatch centers? We have had some inquiries about bringing in other dispatch sites and having them use the physical space. But obviously to do that, part of the conversation we've had with them is, yes, we're interested, but you know that there'd be expenses to that, and those communities would need to bear those expenses and then potentially share in some of our costs. But I see that again as a way that this money could be utilized for a countywide effort and allow those entities that don't have a place to go to either come to our site or Warren. And I've already talked about the cooperative purchases and the advantages of that. So that's a larger summary, hopefully a little more detail on a countywide approach and what those county funds are. I'm now going to spend the rest of the time talking more about the Sheriff's Office dispatch and ComTech. If you want to go to your packet, and page 58 is somewhat where I'm going to start off. And really what we're...
Our pages don't match. The first time you said page, my page didn't match your page. So if you could give me a title of the document so we could find it that way.
From the
no, well, yeah,
budget today. I'm speaking now to Table A, revised.
Thank you.
It was page 58 from what I printed.
Page 63.
All right, so we're 5 off. Thank you.
Gotcha, thank you.
Sorry about that. So on Table A, we have different funding years in front of you, but to break this down and for a new table that we have in the packet, the easiest way for us to focus on it is in one fiscal year, and that being fiscal year 2020. Because fiscal year 2020 is what we're going to be looking at. That time frame actually has our new position requests and our capital funding that we're looking at using the 42 cents for captured within a full fiscal year. So for the point of page 58, as you can see, fiscal year 2020, this outlines, at least in summary format, of what our expenses are. And that overall we're going to be looking at a budget of roughly $8.4 million. So that's where we at least get our expenses from. It includes the new positions, the capital funds that I'll get into more detail. But what I wanted to touch on as well is all the changes that we've made in essentially a very short period of time. Within the past 5 years, we've actually added on 7 new departments or agencies within the Sheriff's Office. We've gone from having a staff, if you will, in the dispatcher to 6 people at a time to now 13 people at a time. Our calls are now basically at 350,000 per year, and for the sheriff's office areas and for the contract services, we offer full service end-to-end dispatch service. So we have dispatchers that are monitoring from the time the call comes in until the last apparatus is cleared on scene. And those are a wide range of services between law enforcement, fire, and EMS. We have a number of systems that are within the dispatch center. I mentioned we have 5 major communication systems. We have a 911 call-taking system, which has recently been updated. For us, we use that system through AT&T and Viper. We have the radio system that we use within the center. I mentioned the CAD system that we use. That's the one that goes out over the mobile computers that they type in. That also then produces reports and records for law enforcement, EMS, and fire. We have a new emergency medical dispatch system since we moved in. We had transitioned over from flip cards or paper, where we now use a computerized system that, again, helps prompt questions that the dispatchers can ask based on the call that is coming in, and it also provides a record-keeping mechanism. And then on the fire department side, we also introduced a new notification system for them. So essentially, when a call comes in, if it's for a fire department, again, we have a computerized system that goes out to the fire stations. It alerts the fire stations over that system. Bells, lights go off, things of that nature. As you can understand, and it was mentioned earlier by Commissioner Dwyer, the dispatch center is the lifeline between our citizens and businesses that call in with needs of help, and we have to have multiple communication methods to make sure that we're as accurate as possible and that we get that information out to the people that need it. Wish you could say there was only one system that was needed, but based on experience and knowing where you can have failure points, we really need all those redundant systems to work. There's also several other systems that they utilize in dispatch on a constant basis. We have Lean that's used on the law enforcement side. We recently introduced a couple years ago of Smart 911. That and Rapid SOS is another new system that was introduced just this year at ComTech that helps with our location services when a call comes in within ComTech. We introduced a new notification system, Send Word Now, which again is a text and email system that goes out to our first responders and different groups that we have within the county. Some of the board members are part of that system. If we have an emergency, we can get that information out to people. And then obviously we've had our siren activation system for years. So those are a highlight of the major systems that we use within that center on any given day. I already talked about the backup center that we've created within this time frame, and also within this time frame akin to this in emergency communications, we've had our whole radio system updated, not only between us putting 5 new towers in the northern end of the county, but the state of Michigan just came in earlier this year, and at a cost to the state, they changed out all the radio equipment, all the microwave system at our tower sites at a value of almost $12 million. So right now, from a radio system perspective and then a ComTech dispatch position, we are in good shape. However, part of what we do in public safety and really with my emergency management background is we're always looking at our capabilities. What are we good at? What are our weaknesses? And there's always weaknesses that remain. So when I spoke last month and I talked about text to 911, I talked about some of those location services. At ComTech, we're pretty confident in what we have and some of those add-on systems that I just talked about, whether it be Smart 911 or the Rapid SOS. However, going back to the other dispatch centers, I can tell you not all of them use those services or have the ability to use those services. So as some of them stated, those are going to be services that they're looking to utilize just for call location to try to get them up to speed and to make those better. And again, for us, never say we're 100% complete. Obviously, you can still have issues in the northern end of the county, more rural areas, depending on a building's coverage. Sometimes cell service isn't always the greatest. For us and other communities, you have the lakeshore issue and answering calls on the lake. So we're always trying to limit those gaps. And we believe we've done a fairly good job with that.
Excellent. We're going to take some questions. There's some of the questions that I have is, we just built a state-of-the-art operational center, Comtech state-of-the-art, and it was designed to bring other communities on board to take advantage of the technology that we put in there, we, the Board of Commissioners, put in there. And what equipment are we lacking today? I just heard you say you don't really need any technology today. You'd like, there's a wish list of things we wish we had if we had unlimited money, but there's nothing that we need at this moment. Is that right?
As I stand here today, there's nothing that we need today of a major item.
Okay.
But looking forward is part of why we have funds set aside for, when you look at equipment and technology, for us, a lot of that is capital costs moving forward to replace in 10 to 15 years all that equipment that we put into Comtech and over at the Warren site.
And we do. We have it's called a capital improvement fund, and we've got money that provides you those monies if you need something. The county has always stepped up and funded what you needed over there if we needed it. So it's not a question of us not having the ability to fund your needs, because I think the county clearly does with our existing revenue right now. We could cover the needs that you have today as well as those future needs by setting money aside over time.
In our purview, though, and based on being here, sometimes that's tough for people to make decisions on. There's a lot of other competing projects, and for us, we'd like to set this money aside, because when it expires, you're going to be looking at close to probably $15 million that'll be needed basically all at one time. I'm not going to say we wouldn't space it out, but if we save this funding, it will be there, and we won't have to go into the capital budget.
I understand what you're saying. You'd build a fund.
Correct.
With the tax dollars raised from this tax to set aside to fund that. You recall the 911 towers we built over time, series of years? Those are many millions of dollars the Board of Commissioners paid and bonded for and paid for, out of our general fund. We can plan for those contingencies going forward. It's not something we haven't done in the past, and something that we could do again if we thought that, and as we've always have thought, that we've always put first responders and emergency management services. When you've come up, or we've rolled out the red card, we haven't really said no to you at all. We've given you everything that you've needed. So, what about so you get the surcharge. Are you going to supplant your existing budget now with this revenue?
There will be funding that will be able to go back to the general fund, looking at approximately $430,000. And you can supplant. What you can't do is go over and take in more money than your budget. So we won't be doing that. Our budget, again, is estimated at $8.4 million. We're not going to be taking in more than $8.4 million. Each dispatch center is in a little different position on being able to utilize those funds. So we'll be able to increase our dispatch costs for the personnel and equipment needs that we have, and project giving back some funding to the general fund to be able to do that.
The larger communities have bigger budgets and they can afford it, but some of the smaller communities, they're getting under $50,000. I mean, how much technically are they going to see any improvement in their operations, or are they just going to supplant the money, pull the money out and just supplant it with the existing revenue they already have now in their budgets, and not be any improvement at all to the local community, because they're just swapping tax money that we've given them through the tax that we taxed everyone else in the county for, and just pull their own money out. So it helps their budget, and they probably appreciate that, but I'm not so sure that money's going to help. I'm not confident that money in all those communities are going to actually make the services to their citizens better, because they've got extra taxes on their cell phones. So, I mean...
That's for each of them to decide. I think from the ones you heard from today...
I know there's some major communities out there, and I respect all of them. I mean, I know most of them, and so they all got their heart in the right place. But
my impression is
how
that
the money's
it's
going to
be extra funding for them.
Yeah. The ideal... Sarisa, they did a presentation, they talked about the various things that they were going to do and so forth, but did they send us any information, any documentation on what it is exactly they were going to do with the money, and anything that, I don't recall seeing anything like that. That'd be helpful if they could have it, because, I mean, they're a county-wide organization that, you know, works with all of us, and I'd be interested to see what their plans are in writing in terms of what they intend to do with it. That's all the questions I have for now. First on the list is Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Hi, Vicki. Thank you
Hi.
for coming back again, and also thank you for being so available to any of the commissioners who have tried to get in touch with you, because you've been a wealth of information and easy to get in contact with, and we've had a few discussions over the last week, and they've helped me understand this a lot better. However, I did get confused today, and Commissioner Brown brought it up. One of the concerns, I think, is that what Commissioner Brown said, that some of this money would go to, and let's just pick on Sarisa since you brought it up, but that money would just go, and then the money that the communities are putting in, they would just pull back. So you don't necessarily have to see an increase in technology and services. And I guess my biggest question is because someone mentioned up there that you can't supplant the money. So that's, I don't understand, because you're saying you can, and someone said you can't, and I just want to know if you can or you can't, or how that works. That's one of my questions.
Yes, from what we understand, you can supplant. Again, you can take that funding in, you just can't go over your budget and collect more than your budget is. They do allow for carryover funds from year to year as well.
Okay. So it's not technically an automatic increase in that budget. It is a different source of money for that budget that you could use as an increase, or you could do whatever you need to do with your budget. Okay, thanks.
Right.
Just a little comment for the board. There's 86 or so, I counted real quick, communities, counties in the state. 10 of them don't impose any type of a surcharge. 18 of, 83, I counted wrong. 18 of them produce, are 42 cents or below, which means that they did something with a board action, right? So 18%, or 23% of them have acted at least at some point with the board. 58 of them are over 42 cents, and anything over 42 cents requires a ballot action and a vote by the people. Now, any of the ones over 42 cents, I don't know if they started with a board action up to 42 cents and then after that realized that they needed more and went to the people, but at least 76% of what's out there have been before the people for a vote. And I'm just saying that because I've heard that as a comment amongst commissioners too, that maybe we need to see what we really need and go out and say, do we need $1.50? And then we just go to the public. And of course there's the other way, and I think, Crystal, what's the city just doing it right now? Muskegon is I think they're voting tomorrow on it. But they did have 42 cents, so apparently some of those went, 42 cents with the board, and then later they realized they needed more. I'm just trying to give everybody a little perspective of, not everybody does it. Not everybody does it putting it on the shoulders of the board. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and I'm not necessarily, I just want to point out the statistics out there, because we've been getting plenty of statistics back at us over time. Can you tell me what percentage of calls come in on 911 on cell phones versus landlines anymore, or any other ways that you guys get calls?
So, for contact sheriff, at least 80%, and so everybody else pretty much the same.
Okay, and you had mentioned something in our conversation about, there's been some talk about the board, these are just different ideas, right, that have been thrown out, and I'm not saying any one of them have any more traction than the next, about we have $700,000 identified in brand new property tax income, and some have mentioned maybe we should put that towards our funding, and then we don't have to do something like this. You mentioned earlier, though, that your plan is to increase contracts accordingly, whether we do something here or not. Can you touch on that just a little bit?
Well, sure, our plan is that if the surcharge weren't to be approved, that because we're saying that these are needs and not wants, so we would still want to move forward and come to the board seeking the 9 positions that we have and then the capital funding. So if we don't have a surcharge for that funding, essentially the board's portion of putting that in is roughly $430,000. And then we'd have to go back to our contracted communities and go back and seek large increases for some of them in their contracts in order to still put us in the position that we believe we need to be in with personnel and equipment. And I'm going to assume that's the new table that we put in your packet. That's probably page 67. That gives you a comparison of what it would look like both with the surcharge and then without the surcharge.
Okay, and if you did have to do that, some of these communities just signed 3-year, or I believe I just heard a 3-year contract. You wouldn't be able to open those up again until at that time, or is there a?
We'd start those discussions now and see if they're open to it. We do have clauses in the contract now, at least I know, that speak to salary and benefits. We can always do that. So I think we'd go back to them, and if they wanted to wait, they'd wait. I think the contracts currently expire end of 2021.
Okay.
So if we needed to wait, it wouldn't be that far off to wait.
Okay. And then lastly, to Commissioner Brown's point, I will say that Commissioner Carabelli and several commissioners for years have been saying, listen, put it in your own budget and start saving for your needs, which is exactly what you're talking about doing, right, on this. And I know we have a capital projects fund, but it is nice to have individual departments looking at their own needs and kind of banking them for the future. So that part of all this, I just wanted to explain kind of, I'm sure that's where that's coming from, and I appreciate that too. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Chairman, or Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Vicki, thanks so much for being here again today and for taking the time last week to talk to me on the phone. It really helped a lot for me to get a better understanding of what we're actually being proposed here. I do have a couple of follow-up questions. One you just touched on, which is the cost of the contracts to communities, if indeed we implemented the changes at the county level, and then, but we didn't institute the charge. If we just, hired the folks that we felt were necessary and did the upgrades without necessary. And I guess I should have looked at this chart earlier, but for like Macomb Township, what would be the actual increase from, let's say, the current contract, what it calls for, which I believe is about 217,000, to what would be called for if we had to ask them to absorb an increase?
Correct, and what we laid it out again is using fiscal year 2020 numbers.
Okay.
So you'd be looking at roughly in 2020, their contract is set to be the 237,000. If we don't get the surcharge, it'd go up to the 301, so roughly 64,000.
Okay.
Is what their increase, all the way up to Sterling Heights, who would increase almost 520,000.
Okay, so it would be, what percent is that, by the way? 237. I'll have to do the math on it.
Sorry, what was the increase across 23?
Increase across the board was 27.
Oh, increase across the board for each entity was 27%.
Okay. A couple of things I still have questions on. You know what, for example, you talked about a number of the things that we could potentially do if we had the additional resources available with regard to training. If we were to put together the enhanced training site and center, do you know how much that would cost to put that site together?
No. Honestly, we're not that far in our planning process yet. We're just in the midst of doing that.
Okay, but there's an amount of $60,000 for dispatcher training that you've projected out to 2021 with the fee increase. So does that include that dispatch training that you discussed?
No.
It does not?
No.
So where would we get that money?
That's part of our discussion and having to look at that. And a potential source could be the surcharge. What our concern and what the training costs in there more are for those classes that aren't covered by the fund that.
No, right, I get that. But
Bartram.
if we don't have that projected out in 2020, 2021 with the surcharge, where would we take the money from elsewhere in this chart to fund that training center, training
We'd have to
site.
figure that out, if there's funding available in the surcharge.
But we don't know how much it would cost, and we don't have it.
Correct, right. Because again, that's what happens in our business, as
Right.
within anybody's business. It's very fluid, it changes all the time. So right now, we are in the midst of planning this. The dispatch training center site came up, and right now, we're starting to get costs for that, to see what it would be.
Does any county in the state have that type of training available?
No, no one else offers that type of
Even those
site.
communities that charge higher fees than we do on cell phone?
No, there's no regional, we've talked about that. There's no regional type of or countywide dispatch site that offers that simulation training, which actually lets them sit down.
But it
at
sounded
a
almost
console.
unanimous from hearing from the folks in the audience that that training was essential. Yet no other community in the state of Michigan, all of which have imposed these charges, does that training?
Not at a simulation site, no.
So nobody else cares. They've implemented the fees, but they haven't done any of that training with these higher fees.
For them, I think we've laid out a lot of different areas that the money can be spent on. For them, maybe it's not a priority. One of the things that we've talked about, and Sherry Bartram's part of our team for that, because she's actually a trainer. Not only is she a dispatch director, she does the training, and from her opinion, she said people would actually want to come to our site from other areas within the region.
It's so
and state.
surprising that training is such a critical component of this job. And given the environment we're in with the, with what we hear about in the news all the time nationally, that other counties, so many of them have imposed these higher fees, have not used it for this type of training. It's kind of surprising.
Right, and I think that's just because of the competing resources and how much the equipment and technology changes within this emergency communications
What about the
field.
fiber optic system? What would be the cost to connect our communities through fiber optics?
We don't have a definitive cost on that either. I know it would be probably, my guess would be probably at least $5 million, if not more, between all the sites.
Okay. I think, and then I heard I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but the woman from Sarisa who came up and spoke, saying that any overage they have that's given to Sarisa, they kick back to their communities.
Yes, there's a potential for that.
Yeah, so
right.
what guarantee do we have they wouldn't kick back everything from the general fund that used to go in there and end up in no net increase in services? I mean, they would just take this money, plug it in to pay for their dispatch services and take out the general fund money, and not a dime more, in theory, could go to fund. We haven't seen any hard plan saying this is how we would spend the money. We've heard them say, well, we might do this, we might do that, we'd like to do training. No one else has ever done it, but, we might. But there's no hard plan. There's no budget increase. There's just things that they might want to do, and they might do, or money might go back to the communities and save money. I also understand that, about 90% of what we're asking at the county level component would be for the additional personnel. And we had a conversation. I don't know how much personnel is needed. I anticipate that you and the sheriff and the and Comtech do know, and a good understanding of that. Then 10% would go toward saving for technology that we anticipate will become available and be helpful.
Correct.
Right. And so I think that Commissioner Brown is right, that I don't know that, at least in my experience, in my intermittent terms as a county commissioner, the county has ever said no to funding emergency services that are vital, whether it's the radio, very expensive radios that we've put in over the years, spending tens of millions of dollars on those kind of upgrades, and we've been able to do it out of the general fund. We've never said no. Sheriff's going to say we've said no.
No. You mind if I jump in and answer that?
Go ahead, Sheriff.
I think it was 2003, 2004. Our 460 radio system was failing. At that time, Sheriff Hackel came in front of this board for funding for the 800 megahertz system, which was rejected, and he was forced to put it out to a vote of the people for a cell phone surcharge, which failed. And then he came back to this board and asked you to fund the radio system because we'd have no communication.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that history.
Yeah.
Fortunately, county has stepped up and
Yeah. No,
paid
no,
for
no.
it, and when the people said no to the surcharge,
Right.
and they got the thing anyway. You know, so it's,
Just to say, if the, the county did, the commission did say no.
Right.
to
Okay,
that
I do
radio
appreciate that history.
increase. That was the truth.
and we did, so
We can
apparently
do it.
we told the folks, or the board told folks at the time that we needed this surcharge in order to pay for this radio system. The people said no, and then we bought it without the increase in their taxes. Right? Okay, that's good history to know.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I have a lot more.
And the second round,
Okay.
please. Thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. You said immediately, you said no, but our conversation, you do have an immediate need, is to reduce the overtime. And how many days overtime did you have? Forced overtime?
They had at Comtech, yes, there's the equipment needs and the personnel is immediate. Last year in 2018, the sheriff's office had 23 forced overtime for every single
The
dispatcher,
dispatch.
56 dispatchers that are in the center. That
That
does not
doesn't-
include the time that they volunteered to take overtime. That was actually ordered where they were forced to work the overtime. For 2019, they're already at 11 orders each, which puts us at a higher pace for 2018.
Well, it was important that you brought that up
Thank
because
you.
you asked if there was an immediate need, and there is an immediate need. So,
Right, on the personnel
Now I want to
side.
ask about some numbers real quick, because I did some math and I just wanted to make sure I was clear. The 53 cents, that's a tech charge that's reoccurring, then the 2 cents of non-reoccurring, right? So your total of 55 cents, correct?
On your phone bill, you're talking
Yes.
now.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the 2 cents is. I know what the 53 cents is and the 25 cents.
I go to our page number.
Oh.
Our page 46, which is on the top of yours, annual report to the Michigan legislator, page 36 on the top of yours. 46 for us. And on the very top, it says page 36.
Yes, sorry, now yes.
So it says 53 technical charge reoccurring, then same thing but not reoccurring for a total of 55 cents. Then I go to the bottom of the page. In this Public Act 51, 2018, the state 911 charge is set at 25 cents. Is that 25 cents in the addition to the 55 cents?
Yes, and the 55 cents goes to the telephone providers. They collect that funding for providing the technology and equipment that they have to go towards the building. So that money's collected by your provider.
And then you get that money back from the state?
We get a portion of the 25 cents, not of the 55 cents.
So
We
get-
see none of the 55 cents.
So what do you receive back then in 911 from the state? What percent do we receive back? It's by populace, right, or no?
I think we still receive probably 20 cents for
20
the
cents.
25 that they collect. They keep a portion at the state level.
And the .55 collected, who does that go to?
That goes to all the telephone providers to help offset their costs for providing the 911 phone lines to all of us and help recoup their costs
I
for
think the
providing.
legislator needs to take a look
the-
at
the
that with
system.
technology that, I don't know if they need 55 cents when, anyways. I'm totaling it all up, and I come to a total, if that 42 cents would have come in effect with what the numbers that are on here, and that's a total of $14.64 for 911 per year per phone. By taking that 25 cents every month, by taking, which is $3, taking the $5.04 that's proposed, the $6.60 of the 55 is $14.64 per phone for the 911. And you're not getting but a little fraction, you get all your 42 cents back, basically, plus 20 cents?
Correct, right.
It's $73 a month in my house.
Well, I got 6 phones, so I'm in the 80s, but that's not here nor there. I do appreciate the sentiment of the other commissioners of you making yourself available and giving us information. So that's been great, and I appreciate that. I have some questions, math questions, that didn't add up to me, and I'm wondering if this is why, if it's county-wide. When I look at the chart that says annual report to the legislator, and it says total general fund money spent in Macomb County alone is $13,783,769, $13,783,769. $793,769. Page on us 51, we're the third one down. I'm not understanding, and then I look at your budget of $7 or $8 million proposed. Is that taking the entire county
Yes.
in encapsulation?
Yes.
Okay. Next question I have for you is, I go to page 64 on us, table A1. And I'm trying to understand that this is just the manpower difference? Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. That was to show you the existing positions that we have now,
And what it would be?
and then the 9 new positions, yes.
So if I took $613,230 as the increase from the two charts, and then I say, okay, 70% is the other users, and we're 30%, they're closer to paying $429,000, and we're closer to paying $183,000. So is that pretty close? And I know it's 68%, but for my round figures, a 70-30. So it's about $183,000 would be the county's portion on the manpower part of it. Is that pretty close to being correct?
Did you say no?
Yeah, it's about a third. It's roughly 1/3 of the county is paying.
All right, I got to figure your math out, because according to the numbers I'm looking at, I just divided it here and there. So 130 for the manpower portion for us, correct?
1/3.
Okay. Chair Brown and Chair Smith had talked about you saving, and this is something that's a little frightening long-term. You do nothing, $15,000, when you have to come up with your new technology when everything goes out, and we talk about the legacy costs of all this stuff, and eventually it needs to be replaced. And it's usually costing more money as we go down the line. Then we get licensing, and what's the other one? Maintenance fees. I mean, we can go on with all the costs of this. I, along with every other commissioner here, support everything that you have going on, and I think this is something needs to happen in your department at the Comtech. How we get from A to B is maybe a little bit different as far as true user cost or true benefit. If I'm a benefactor of it and I'm paying for a service, I need to pony up for what my portion true cost is. And if it's saving an extra 10% a year on a contract with the community to build up that tech fund to be able to buy the new stuff, I think that needs to happen. How we get from A to B, I guess, is where we're going to have to deliberate. But right now, until I can see that broken out in minutia of if one of the communities is 42%, well, then the 42% of the increase in those charges should be attributed to that community, not to the whole pie. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. The original piece of paper that you gave us a while back, and then you added a line, yearly cost per device instead of per person.
Correct.
Do you have that in front of you? It's R44.
Yes.
And by the way, the reason the pages are off is we've got some attorney-client documents in ours that throw it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, this was the page I saw that had the breakdown for the different communities that weren't the counties, correct? Was there another page that I'm missing that had that breakdown?
Of the
Where it says
per person and
Sarisa, it says Sarisa, Centerline, Chesterfield, Romeo. Is that what do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I'm looking at this one.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Would you explain these numbers very quickly? Because I was trying to follow the columns, and it wasn't making sense to me. And I remember being confused when we talked about it before, and then a light bulb went on, and I think it went back off for me. So.
Sure, and I think when we talked, going back to when we met earlier in the year, sometimes how the numbers don't add up is because the way the state said to make your best approximation of how much money you're going to collect is to take 75% of the population and then multiply that number by the 42 cents. So that gets us to the 3.3 million at the top. But then when you go to figure out what each PSAP will get, you do it based on their population.
Where is the 3.3?
If under the 42 cent
42
surcharge.
cents, okay, I got it.
Right.
So the breakdown for Sarisa is then what with the 42 cents?
Is the 596,000.
596, okay, that's what I thought, because
Yes.
there were other numbers being thrown around. There was 300 or something, and so I just wanted to get some clarification on a couple of things. Okay, so then these other numbers prior to that are different. It's 25 cents or 19 cents is what those columns are.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So a couple of questions. The first one, there has been some misinformation out there. I've been receiving phone calls from elected officials that seem to have different information than I had. The first one was, did you say that the county can do locator on cell phones, but Sarisa can't, or was it the other way around? One of those entities couldn't locate cell phones at this point?
No, they're essentially for having more advanced, again, never going to say 100% that it's covered, but for our cell phone location, many providers have their basic service through their 911 provider and that phone system. I can tell you, I know what we've done at our center and at Sarisa in order to enhance that program and try to get it more definitive. We've added on 2 programs. One is Smart 911 that currently the state of Michigan pays for any PSAP center that wants to use it. And what Smart 911 does is, as a business or a resident, you can sign up for that service and you can go and enter information about your residence or business. You enter obviously your address, you can tell them how many people live in your home, you can tell them whether you live in a 1-story building, if it's an apartment, you can put in medical history. And if you have Smart 911, what happens is when that phone call comes in through your 911 phone system, it gives you information, but then the smart message also pops up if they've entered their information. So that
I'm
helps
just
to-
talking about, I
to
have a heart
verify.
attack at 13 Mile and Mound. I'm not at my home.
Correct,
That's what I'm trying to, do both these 2 entities have that capability, or do neither, or does one?
No, and then we both have Rapid SOS, which is another system. Again, there's a lot of systems out there, so that's why this becomes very complicated and all the technologies that are there.
You gotta keep it simple for me.
And-
So all
right.
I wanna know
I'm gonna
is
say-
if I'm at 13 and Mount and I have a heart attack, well, somewhere where the county covers, and I have a heart attack, can you see where I am if I call 911? Just yes or no. You gotta keep it simple for me.
I'll say yes.
Thank you. And Sarisa, if I call on Sarisa, because I've had to call a couple of times, and they ask me about 15 times where I am, and I'll say I'm at the corner of such and such and such and such, because I don't always have an address. Can they now see my location when I make a phone call?
Yes, better than they could before, yes.
Okay. It's been a little while since I had to call. So both entities have that capability. Okay, and we already answered the statement about if communities are giving money into 911, that money can be returned to them and be replaced by this. So that one was clarified. So on your, let me get the right thing here. Okay, so on my page 63, it's the dispatch fund budget is what the top says, and it's table A revised.
Okay.
So what we have is 2019 proposed dispatch fund budget, the first gray column, and then we have 2020?
Yes.
That's not what we approved at this point, right? We approved the 2019 budget. It didn't look like this, correct?
Correct.
And where can I find, I was looking in the budget and I found a section for general fund, but where can I, do you know under what section of the budget I'd be able to find what it is we actually approved?
Yeah, well, these costs are all within the sheriff's office budget.
Okay. Thank you.
And had to be extracted from there.
Are you done, Commissioner? You said thank you. I didn't know who you were talking to.
No, but I'm almost done. Thank you.
No, take your time.
Okay, this is really important because this was another question that came up. First of all, who receives the funds? For the non-county dispatch, does it go to the county and then it's sent to, say, Sarisa?
Yes.
Okay, and how is it determined which cell phones are in which location, or how many cell phones are in Fraser versus how many are in Sterling Heights?
It's based on billing address, and all of the telephone providers have to provide that information to us, and then they send us a check accordingly for the money that they've collected off the phone bills. They will then remit that revenue to us at the county,
And then
the
how do
county will.
you make that determination? Are you going to have a list of every cell phone?
Yes, we'll have that information from the providers.
So everything collected within Sarisa's boundaries goes to Sarisa. It isn't, you don't have any leeway on what you send Sarisa.
Well, sorry, I guess I should correct. I should say we do it then based on population, based on what the providers send to us for what they're collecting off the billing addresses.
So those are two different things.
Gets divided out by population.
Okay, so they're two different things.
Correct.
Okay.
Technically, right. That's how they base it off of is billing address. And then.
But we don't have that capability to know that there are 4 phones in this house, so that those
Correct.
the money for those 4 phones go to Sarisa. We don't have that capability.
Right. I don't, sorry. Have you ever seen, Sherry, the state reports?
I've never seen the state reports. Typically, they don't give you.
Break it down. Yeah. Sorry, I misspoke. Typically, they don't break it down. They'll send a lump sum, and then we divide it up by population.
That's frustrating. That's not your issue, but that's frustrating.
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm done thinking.
Commissioner Lucido.
Actually, my question was pretty much the same. So it's not, the money isn't going, so let's say someone has a work cell phone and a home cell phone, but both bills come to that house.
Yes.
The money's dispersed by population, not by number of cell phones within that geographic area?
Correct.
Okay. That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ha.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Vicki. It seems like you're on the witness stand again,
No,
but that's
I'm
okay.
fine.
We appreciate all your answers.
I'm good,
I think
thank you.
about 65 of my 70 questions I had written down here have been answered. But the one that Commissioner Carabelli touched on was the projected decrease in overtime. How did you come to that assumption?
I will let Steve Adair handle that. He did the
Thanks.
numbers.
We developed a spreadsheet that estimated what the overtime reduction would be based off of a reduction that we estimated internally at 75% of ordered hours, because nobody really wants to work ordered overtime hours, and then roughly a third of voluntary overtime because of the additional man hours. And of those additional man hours, we applied we applied the hours of reduction based off of only the deputy actual hours on the job, which I believe is I don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but it's not every single hour of the working year, because of course there's vacation, there's sick time, but there's an internal factor that we use for that. So there was a calculation done that we could share if the board would desire to see it.
Thank you. Secondly, Sarisa itself is not countywide. It's East Point, Roseville, and we're back to you, Vicki.
Yes.
Or Sherry.
Thank you.
St. Clair Shores.
And Fraser, yes.
I was part of the history of forming Sarisa. It was due to cost savings dealing with our first responders. The intent, if this were to pass, is not to supplement what revenue stream they would be obtaining back into the general budget, and then tell Sarisa, go find your own technology to be able to protect our citizens. I've heard that said 3 times. And there's a lot of focus here on this money is for training. It goes far beyond training. You described about 12 different enhancements that I've heard here. Commissioner Kleinfeld keeps saying, keep it simple. I won't use the last S. For $5 a year, what do I get? If I'm a cell phone, which I am, and by the way, I have 4 or 5 in my house as well, what do I get, bottom line, for my $5? Is my opportunity to respond quicker, better? Is my opportunity, because we have bogeys for response time, I think in Roseville ours is 2 minutes, is that right, Brian? Does that improve? And having had to use dispatch, ALS, 911 on numerous occasions with my father, that timing criteria on a couple occasions I know saved his life. Is that what we're talking here? The focus on training really bothers me. That cannot be, although it is a high priority, it can't be the number one priority.
Correct. It's one of the priorities, and you're right. We've listed several, again, for ComTech and the other dispatch centers. But yes, collectively, we're talking about improved service. And you have improved efficiencies, whether it's time, you have better information, more accurate information, which all results in quicker, better, and faster services and the sharing of information between the people that are coming to help that day. I can tell you from working with dispatch and working with first responders, obviously they want to get it right every single time. And it pains them and harms them and in some cases haunts them when they don't get it right. And by making sure that we have these technologies, and again, I know some of them may seem redundant, what that actually does is reinforce where people are at, that they're getting the information and that it's being shared by multiple sources. So we're trying to eliminate as much as we can. Again, I'm never a 100% person, but we're trying to eliminate our single point of failures. So yes, big picture, better.
Thank you, and I want to thank all our first responders for showing up today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. I'll yield. Hi, Vicki.
Hello.
Again, I'm one of those people that took up your time, and I appreciate it.
No problem. It's glad to do it.
We keep hearing this number, 42 cents, being knocked around back and forth. Remember, folks, it's not 42 cents. It's 42 cents per phone, per landline, per cell phone. But at the same token, a lot of people are eliminating their landlines. So that's going to be, and I'm probably one of them. It's going to there's a cost saving. I know, again, we're talking pennies, but when you add it all up, it comes up to millions of dollars. Each one of us is responsible to our constituents and also all of Macomb County. Now, Vicki just stated that this charge is going on because of population. Well, myself, Mr. Majek, we represent Sterling Heights. Sterling Heights right now pays $1,800,000 a year to ComTech. And that is going to increase 27%. We just renewed our contract. So automatically, I see savings there for Sterling Heights, the amount of $500 and some odd dollars that they're going to have to pony up when this goes into effect, if in fact this doesn't pass. If this amount goes over that amount, we're all aware of the fact it has to go to the voters. So my question to Vicki was, how long are you going to be able to use this money before you come back to us and say, hey, we need some more? And she couldn't give me that answer, and I think it's an ambiguous question because you really can't answer it. It could be a year from now, could be 2 years from now, could be 5 years from now. That money might suffice in that respect. My concern is, what are we going to do when it comes time for we're talking about people with overtime. These are, as we all are aware, very stressful jobs, very, very stressful jobs. And the longer they're there with forced overtime, the more that our general public, our constituents, could have problems. I'm not saying they do, but they could have problems. It's a stressful job. Are we, as commissioners, are we prepared to spend out of our general fund enough to pay for 8 new employees and the legacy costs? Or are we willing to go ahead with this, which is a fact that it'll be spread throughout the entire county, and it doesn't have to come out of our general fund, because we're always saying, every time somebody comes back to us, it's always, they're readjusting their budgets. And we, as commissioners, and we all know it, we hear it, they're standing in front of us saying, listen, we need some more money, we need some more money. Well, in this particular case, Comtech's going to have their own set aside. They won't have to come to us for this additional money, hopefully. So I'm trying to look at both sides of this, and I'm saying to myself, what would my constituents want? And I have, and I say myself and Mr. Myjack, our population in Sterling Heights is probably about 35 to 38% senior citizens. Now, the ones that I personally have talked to, explained this to them, and I explained to them it's not the 42 cents. It's going to end up costing maybe $10, $12 a year. All of them. I have yet to find one that says, no, I don't. I take that back. I apologize. There is one that didn't say to me, we important that, Mar, that didn't say to me, I think this is great, I think you should do it, let's make sure that we're protected. We use 911 all the time. Not all the time, but they do use it. So that's my spin on it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little bit intrigued by what Chairman Smith had brought up in terms of some statistics. It appears that 80% of the communities that have the surcharge did this by putting it to a vote of the people. And in fact, some of them, I think
Point of information.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right.
No.
Well, and it even appears that, I don't know if it's Muskegon or if it's Monroe County, but they already had a 42-cent surcharge, and then they went ahead, and now they're asking the people, I think as early as you say tomorrow, to vote for an even further increase. So along the lines of what Commissioner Romano was saying, let me ask you this. Let's say we approve 42 cents today. And then next year, suddenly we find out, boy, we really need some new technology. This 42 cents isn't going to cut it. We can come back every year, can't we? And at this point say, now we got to have a resolution because we need more than 42 cents to put it to the people. Now we need actually 56 cents. Let me ask you something else too. We can do this every year, can't we? We can always come back on this 911 surcharge and say we need more money every single year. Could we not?
Yes, we could.
The statute provides for that. Okay.
Correct.
There are a lot of unanswered questions still. You've done a great job in presenting a lot of answers to some of the questions, and I certainly am not opposed to the service. Every time we have something here when it comes to first responders, they are the biggest lobby I've ever seen. No other group ever comes in front of this board as looking as crisp in their uniforms as first responders do. But here's the thing. The challenge in government today, when you're an elected official, when you deal with your constituents, is what is this money going to? What am I paying this for? Okay? Most people, I do agree with Commissioner Romano. If they're told specifically, this is what this is going to be for, they're happy to pay for that. If you tell them 45 cents a gallon for your roads, they might not like it, but if they're convinced it'll go towards the roads, they may pay for it. That's the governor's problem. Our problem is to go to our constituents and say, this 42 cents is going for what exactly? Some of it for training, some of it for technology. I was under the impression that they didn't have the ability to locate 911 callers. Now I understand that you can locate 911 callers. So I was telling some of my constituents, well, don't you want to know where you're going to be if you call 911? Now I'm told we do have that technology. I guess my question is, to you, is what's wrong with putting it to the vote of the people? We have all these folks here who are good lobbyists. They can go to their communities and say, look, we need this. We might even need more than 42 cents. And if we're going to save up for a $15 million hit in a couple years, why not do it now? The way I like to operate my home is, look, if I know I got this expense, I live on the water, I got a seawall expense, and I got a lot of other problems over here now. If I know I got to repair my seawall, I put a little bit of money away So 10, 15 years from now, I can take care of my seawall. I have the money there. Mr. Chair, and this is totally up to you. We've had everybody talk, I think. My position on this thing is, and this is something we can come back on next year too, because you've answered that question. We don't have to do it this year, but if we want to do it right, maybe we should have a few more questions answered. Maybe we should have some folks here, including ourselves, go out more and express how important this surcharge would be for services. And so, it's your call, Mr. Chair, but I would be inclined to make a motion now to simply just postpone this. I know that we put this ahead for you in May. I know that you'd like to budget for this. I know that we're looking for dispatchers. It's not to say that we can't give you county funds for this year to cover those dispatchers and then come back in a year and implement a surcharge greater than 42 cents. But those are just where I feel right now based on the information, the further information I've received and in talking to my constituents. Again, it really comes down to this. The constituents I've talked to are simply not clear on where this extra money that they're going to be burdened with goes. And so I have to look at that. I even had a mayor of one of my communities call me. He was confused as to how he was going to get the money from this surcharge. And I think if you got elected officials somewhat confused, you can certainly bet that the public is confused. And I don't want a confused public. I think people like paying a user fee, but only if they know what it's for. So,
thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Second that motion.
But actually, he spoke first. You're the next speaker on the list.
Mr. Chair, I made a motion to consider maybe postponing this till your next monthly meeting. It's not something that we can't address.
The motion has been made and supported by Commissioner Gillette. Now we're going to have discussion on the motion. Anyone wish to speak on the motion? Commissioner Smith, Chairman Smith.
Thank you. Though I'm not sure if everybody's ready to decide today or not. Today is never the final decision because our full board meeting is next week, which we were planning on pulling to Wednesday because that's the 15th, right? So the 15th is the date that if we were going to get this money for this year, we would have to have this vote in the affirmative by, correct?
Right, we have to have our paperwork, including signed resolution, into the state by 4 p.m. on the 15th.
So while I am not opposed to, we have a Wednesday meeting, a Thursday meeting, a next Monday meeting, and a next 2 meetings on Wednesday, I'm not opposed to moving some more discussion down the line and trying to get some more maybe answers to some questions. I'm not for arbitrarily passing this on beyond the deadline at this point. So if you have a postponed date beyond next week, I am not going to be for that.
Okay. Next is Commissioner Ha. Then
Commissioner Sauger, I think, had not gotten an opportunity to speak, and he is on there. I just wanted to point that out to you.
Commissioner Sauger.
Thank you there, Commissioner Veronica. First of all, Vicki, how many employees are now at Comtech, at the dispatch center?
It's a total of 61.
61?
Yes.
And how many were there when it opened compared to what there is now?
Approximately 30.
Okay.
In the 30s, sorry.
Listening to all these comments about $1 here, $2, I know it adds up, but is there a price you put on life? When you speak about all these emergencies, nobody talks about it's going to cost you this, you're going to try to save that person. So my bottom question, or my main question is, do you put a price on life? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. On the motion, Commissioner Ha.
In light of what Chairman Smith just indicated, does that impact the motion to table this until when?
Not table, but this is postponed. Because if it was tabling, then we wouldn't be talking about it.
Thank you, Andre. I'll learn that when I become a clerk.
Thank you.
Mayors don't count.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I didn't get an answer, Chair.
Well, but it's motion to postpone to this next committee meeting.
No. I'm sorry. Let me get it clear. What is this motion for when?
Well, that would be at the discretion of the chair. My motion was to postpone at the discretion of the chair. It's his committee. It's his call on when, if he wants to push this over to, the full board, or if he wants to do it at his next committee meeting. I think my concern is, I still don't think enough information has been presented to the public, and I represent the public, and as Commissioner Romano says, I have constituents in Harrison Township and St. Clair Shores, and I also represent the county as a whole. And I just don't think enough information has been put out in the press. We've got two fine people here from the Macomb Daily and the Free Press to explain what the benefit is of this 42-cent surcharge. And again, that's the challenge of government these days, is if you're going to have me spend money, what's it going for? I don't think people are afraid to spend money. I just think people want a little bit more information about where that tax or where that surcharge is going to go to. So my motion is to postpone it at the discretion of the chair, which would be his next meeting.
I would recommend we waive it to the full board, if that's,
When is that?
which would be the,
The motion is proposed to your next meeting, though.
motion's the next meeting.
Yeah, no, I'm saying I'm giving it to the discretion of the chair, but it would be his next meeting presumably,
Yeah,
which
all
is
right.
what, next month?
We'll just leave it at that, we'll vote that on it. Leave it that way, we'll leave it at,
Voting, I'm still, I don't understand.
The motion is postponed to the next meeting of this committee,
that's right.
Which is
scheduled for next month.
after the 15th.
June 3rd.
Could be, and her deadline
June
is the
13th.
15th.
No, there's no deadline.
Well,
We've been doing it we haven't had it for decades, and now there's a deadline.
Yeah.
And again, just a point of information, Vicky did say we can bring this up every year. It's not like, maybe next year we decide maybe we should give it 56 cents and put it to the voters. I understand the need for something this year with dispatchers. I think we have some money in the general fund to cover that, and then if we decide next year to put it on the ballot for a higher amount, that's why I think we need a little bit more time. I think the constituency needs to know what this money is going to.
Okay, anyone else, Commissioner Kleinfeld?
The motion is for the next meeting. If you make the motion to postpone at the discretion of the chair, he could postpone it for 30 seconds. So you want your motion to be a little bit more specific than that. So I agree that what he supported is for his next meeting.
Commissioner-
Because that's not what he said.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette.
Point of information, that's June 3rd.
I'm still talking.
June 3rd.
June 3rd.
Excuse me.
Point of information, June 3rd is the next meeting of this
Okay.
committee.
I'm not going to support this motion, and I'll tell you why. I've learned for 20 years in politics, if you're going to pull a tooth out, you pull it out quickly, you don't pull it out slowly, And this is the kind of thing where whether it's popular or it's not popular, it's going to be popular with a group of people and unpopular with another group of people. But it's not going to be any easier the next time, is my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Gillette.
Well, I do agree with Commissioner Kleinfeld on that portion, but I think as far as what we can learn, and is a significant amount. We've done without this surcharge for many decades. There's not something that's cropped up all of a sudden that makes it that we have to do this next week. And there's nothing that's changed over many, many years. And I think we have money in the capital budget. We also have money left that's coming unexpectedly on some property tax revenues that we can budget for and put aside money for the technology improvements that we need. And we should start putting that money aside. I think that's great planning. I think there's been great work done by the county and that we should start putting that money aside. And we can then look toward what we may need to set aside, get more answers for how the communities will spend this money. Will they kick it back to their general fund? Do they have plans to actually implement it to go to public safety? Is there a system that we can actually start buying that will improve call location? Currently, we're told that we have the best there is right now. We should start putting money aside for the future. So I really think we should take our time and prove these systems as they become up for available. If there's a system to put in fiber optic, and we need X number of dollars, let's start putting that money aside. But right now, we don't know how much it is. We've done that for decades. We've upgraded all of our systems for decades. What we've done has worked. We have the most advanced dispatch center in the state. The current way we've done it has worked, and we will continue as a board, I'm very confident, in making public safety our top priority. But public safety is our top priority, not necessarily higher taxes. If we can provide the highest quality of public safety without raising people's taxes, we've done a lot better. Thank you.
Anybody else on the motion?
Yes.
Go ahead. You're all done?
Thank you. You know, they say there's unanswered questions. I don't know what else we can ask this lady that she has not answered, and answered truthfully. We might not like what she has said, but she has answered them all truthfully, and all the questions that we've asked, she's answered, not only answered, she's answered in detail. So I'm voting no on this motion. Thank you.
Mr. Haw?
I know you've asked the question 4 times. Are we discussing the motion on the floor?
Yes.
What I just heard was a complete dissertation of why we shouldn't be doing something or should be doing something. Are we discussing the motion on the floor, or are we going to offer our opinions? Because I can take another 20 minutes to refute most of what I just heard. Public safety for me is number one, has been number one, and will continue to be number one. So we're going to vote on the motion on the floor.
Yes.
Sir?
Yes, you vote.
Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Smith?
I just want to help clear this up, right? A no vote means that we're back to making a motion to either do something else. So
Yes.
postponement, we'll send it to the June 3rd meeting.
Yes.
And that's where we're at.
Yep. Okay. Please vote to postpone to June 3rd.
Postpone to June 3rd.
Postpone to June 3rd is... No. Support the motion.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
No, what if we wanted, so there's no way to bring it up? Okay. So there's another one.
The motion to postpone failed, 4-8. So there's no motion on the floor. Anyway, what's the board's pleasure? Commissioner Kleinfeld?
I'll make a motion, but we have 2 different resolutions. Is one just a second, is one a newer version of the other one in there?
One is a board's version of what they submitted.
We put it on our stationery.
Okay, so the one that says official resolution is our version.
The board, it's got a watermark that says board draft.
Okay, so this was originally somebody else's draft.
Right.
And I actually wanted to split the difference, but I'm not hearing anybody who wants to split the difference. People either want to make up their mind yes or make up their mind no. And I'd like to speak to it, but I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the resolution, R19-3086.
Is there support? Support by Commissioner Romano.
So could I speak to it very quickly?
Yes, please, absolutely.
Thank you. Whether a community whether a community is able to get a little bit of funds back that they're putting into 911 or not, I don't think is really necessarily our place to determine whether that's right or wrong, because some communities are putting a lot of money into 911, more so than other communities. Every community has a different situation. Our communities on the south end are landlocked, and so while Macomb County is growing, the tax dollars coming in, it's generally because the open areas, you can build new buildings and get new tax revenue, and we don't have that option on the south end. So our ability to recover from what happened in 2008 is much different than the northern communities. So I'm not going to dictate to anybody how or what it should happen with the funds. And I might get hit with this when I get home, but ultimately, I know the struggle that Roseville's going through, and St. Clair Shores and East Point and Fraser, because of our location and what happened to us financially. And this will cause them to not have to put more money into 911 that they don't have. So for that reason, I'm going to support it. And if it doesn't pass, then maybe I'll offer a second version. Thank you.
Is that been made in support? Does anyone wish to speak on it? Commissioner Smith? Oh.
Well, I'm glad you supported your own motion. Yes, I'm going to support it. So a couple things. I wish we would have just moved forward it to full board, because I will vote to approve, but to forward to full board, because I think there's more, there might be a few more questions to be answered, and right, what it means, right.
Bottom line, if that's what the motion means.
That's fine.
usually what it means when we do an approval.
Thanks. So I have to speak two things. Number one, everybody that I talked to in the last few weeks, nobody is against what you're looking to do, right? To increase the manpower and the technology fund at Comtech. I haven't talked to one person that's not for it. They just have different ideas on how to do it, right? So I just want to make it perfectly clear to everybody out there that even though some of the people may be talking against this 42 cents, they're not talking about not then supplanting it with extra money that we've just realized through property taxes or other ideas. So, but what that does is kind of leave communities like Fraser and Roseville and Sarissa and Warren and Armada Township out of the mix. And I'll tell you that I have a little issue with supporting this in the way that we built Comtech, and heck, I never thought Clinton Township was going to come over to it. I never thought Sterling Heights was going to come over to it. Matter of fact, I remember being on the department, and we were talking about this, and well, it was just after, and no one wanted to come, and they're all happy that they did. And my point to this is there is something out there better for Sarissa and Warren, or comparable. How's that? So when you say that they need help, there's an alternate world for them to join, and they would be a part of all of what we have at the county. So I would hope that everybody is at least thinking about coming into this, what is a fantastic dispatch center, and maybe taking the burden off of your own individual communities and kind of doing it as a economy of scale with the county. That being said, I'm for moving it forward to full board.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think everyone knows where I stand, but I'd like to not impose this additional tax. But if we are going to, I think it's something that we should allow the citizens to vote on, rather than just imposing it on their phone bills and telling them that we know what's best. So, I recognize the motion is to move it forward to full board. I hope we give it some thought. Maybe between now and full board, we can talk about allowing citizens to vote on their own tax, having their own phone bills go up. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple questions, I guess, directed to the chair. My calendar says we're going to meet on the 16th of May. That's after the date that she needs. Now, if we're coming...
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I had a discussion with Vicki and a few of the commissioners and the staff that if this does get moved forward, we would pull that full board meeting to Wednesday and just combine it with the meetings on Wednesday as after the last meeting on Wednesday.
Okay. Now, the next question is, let's say it goes to full board on the 15th. That gives her, I'm going to ask you this, gives you enough time at 4 o'clock? You have to have the paperwork in on the 15th?
Well, that's why I made mention of the 4 o'clock time frame. I'm not sure if you normally meet at 3, it gets approved. I don't know if you're in the meeting, we just need the resolution signed and be able to do it.
It's as simple as that? It's as simple as having the resolution then? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
We have the rest of the paperwork done. We need the signed resolution to send with it. I mean, if your full board meeting starts at 3, I don't know what other committee meetings you have. And
we'll discuss the logistics of that possibility after
Let me
this.
just, to discuss on Commissioner Kleinfeld's motion, yes, this will take it to the full board, but does the public know that we're going to have a meeting now on the 15th? If anybody looks at our calendar,
Commissioner, there is a specified time frame that we have to announce to the public on a meeting change, and that will be taken care of in advance of I think it's 18 hours. 18 hours. We will do that immediately when I work with Vicki, just to find out this time frame in case it, if it passes, so we will be within that time.
Okay, and the last question I have, I guess it's a comment on the motion. The discussion on the motion is, there is another alternative. You can either pass this next Wednesday, we can reject it next Wednesday, or we can put it to the people next Wednesday. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Dujay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good discussion. I think it's important that everybody talk about where they are and what they're doing. I think this is a good idea. I supported Comtech when it came in and Warren became a portion of Comtech. That was $10 million. It was very surprising. What surprised me during those discussions were that we had blackout zones along DeQuinder, we had blackout zones along 8 Mile Road. It was late to put it up, but we finally got everything going and everything started working, and we're all going for the public good. I think this is a good idea. I support the motion that's on the floor now. I don't think we should postpone it. 42 cents is what this board can approve. I don't see it going up next year or next month or whenever else. It'll go up eventually, but who knows when. But my problem is I want to see this implemented, and I want to see us moving forward with this. Because a lot of times we've waited until after something happens, and then all of a sudden we're scrambling in order to make it right and to move forward. Let's get this done, let's vote it through, and help the people that we do represent. Because after everything's said and done, we are representing people that are aging a little bit, even in Sterling Heights. But I'd like everybody to seriously take a look at that and vote to pass this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall in the second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not going to agree with everybody's aging all the time over here.
Thank you.
The selective thank you, Veronica. I agree with Commissioner Leonetti. When we come in here, we do have 3 options, and those are the ones that I'm sure our resolution currently does not address those 3 options. That's what we need to be prepared for. I started printing, and again, I appreciate the first responders being here, all of the endorsement letters for this. My paper tray ran out of paper. So they're not here advocating supplements to their budget. They're advocating a need for us in the future. And that's what we need to be prepared to deal with, Chairman, at the meeting as we have scheduled it now. So I would recommend the resolution be written to address all 3 concerns that Commissioner Leonetti has proposed. I don't know who's drafting it, but good luck with that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Majak.
Yeah, just a quick question. So on one of the options of the 3, vote of the people, are we talking about a proposal of 42 cents going to a vote of the people or something?
It'd have to be 43 cents, point of information. It'd have to be
Okay.
1 cent more than.
Well, that's not.
I'm just hypothetically speaking, if that's a third option, he's saying it'd be 43 or greater, right? What am I saying wrong,
Speak
Bob?
to the motion. It's not the motion on the floor. The motion is.
Right. I just want to know those 3 options, what we're going to have, so.
Okay.
Which I think I'm pretty clear on now, so, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sauger?
Just want to end with my comment I said earlier, don't put a price on life. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you. Just for clarification, we can't put 3 things in there, number 1, because they're all different from each other, but it doesn't matter because there aren't 3 things. There's a motion to approve, there's a motion at the board meeting, a motion not to approve, there's a motion to take it to the vote of the people, there's a motion to go with a smaller fee than the 42 cents. I don't want anybody to just, I don't want it, as people are voting, to think that there's only 3 options for you and that's the end of it. There's all kinds of options. I've been through a lot of them in my head before today. Thank you.
Thank you. No other speakers. Please vote. Okay. Motion passes 7-4. Okay, thank you very much, Vicki.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask that we move our finance, our HR person. We got him on the, I didn't see him sitting there. He was listed in the agenda. That's item number.
Mr. Chairman?
Item, where's that? Where's he at?
Andy, he's right.
Which one?
I don't know, he was,
Which one was?
he should be this, the collective bargaining agreement, so 9, is it 9A?
9A. Can we move 9A up, Commissioner, without objection, so we can take care of the HR before we go into executive session? It's a contract ratifications.
Yeah, he doesn't need closed session or.
What's that? Please, seeing no objections, we'll do that. We're going to put you up front. You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, very much.
Thank you.
You were kind enough to let us make a little bit of an adjustment to your agenda this afternoon. Thank you to Crystal for always working with us on that. We had come to agreement with the Ad Tech unit, which is a supervisor's unit at the Roads Department. The agreement is in front of you. We have the opportunity to improve many of the wages for the Ad Tech employees. They have ratified the agreement overwhelmingly. There's about 97 employees in that department. About 80 of them approved this agreement, with about 12 denying it. So there were some that did not vote, but we believe that we came to a great agreement. We believe that we have, obviously, we have overwhelming support from that group, and we are asking that this board also approve the agreement as indicated.
Thank you. Good job on that. I need a motion to approve this. Moved by Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Kleinfeld. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, please vote then.
Yeah, you can put me as the last item and all. Thanks, everybody.
Sending us all those emails, you get to pay the price now.
That passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Motion passed 9-0. Item 6, the appointment interviews for the Health Department Hearing Board. There's no one here, so I need a motion to receive and file. There's no, what? There's no one here. All those in, please vote. What?
What we'd be receiving and filing is the interviews, and there are no interviews. This is the second time the board has tried to receive and file nothing, and I'll vote against receive and filing nothing, because nothing is.
No, we're going to note that they offered to come here and they didn't show up, so that's in the record.
We're confirming.
All right, please vote.
Yeah, we're confirming the appointments.
Receiving and filing the report. It goes to full board.
Okay.
Maybe they'll come then.
Okay. Good. Now what?
All right. Closed session pending litigation. Need a motion to go into closed session? Do I need to say anything to read the recitals?
If I
please.
may, if there were a motion to go.
Commissioners, please, order, please.
If there were a motion to go into closed session, one motion to address a couple of these items, and that way you could kind of roll through them all at the same time. And so the specific motion should include reference to the litigation, which is case number 2018-001252-CZ, which is a pending litigation, and attorney-client privilege contained in the attorney memorandums, one which you already have, and two, I have a second one that was requested by the board, which I'll hand out.
All right, I've made that motion. Is there support? Support. Please vote.
I want to recite that motion.
Thank you very much. Close the doors. Turn out the lights.
Thank you, man.
Chair Brown?
Yes.
Are we going to act at all on 9B, or are we just going to leave it sit? We could act to just move it to full board.
All right, item 11, or item 12 is correspondence. Word. Please vote. All right, a new business, anyone, any new business? Any new business? Seeing no new business, the public participation, anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public, you have 5 minutes.
You're
Name
up.
and address for the record.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared.
Your phone is off.
Well, actually, I did submit a video, and I'm assuming you guys got that, or? Okay. All right. I wanted to go straight to the one video. So this is a young man. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, come on, stupid phone. What's that? Okay, sorry. So, long story made short, my name is Robert Levos. I currently reside in Oakland County. My family resides here I live in Auburn Hills. And my family lives here in Macomb County, Clinton Township. So one of my children was in the car of this young man. It doesn't totally matter. But he was arrested. He was sitting in the back of the police car, and I guess I'll let you guys watch the video itself. At 30 minutes and 1 minute, whatever, 30 minutes and 59 seconds, something like that. He was sitting in the back car. He's talking to his mom on a cell phone, already in handcuffs. The police officer realized he's talking to his mom on the cell phone, promptly opens the door, forces himself, telling this child to shut off the cell phone, give it to him. He didn't. He's a minor. I want to clarify, he is a minor. So you women, if you have children, think about your son, 17 years old, being dumb. Maybe on something. I mean, they say he's on something. I don't know what, allegedly. If he's on something, whatever. He's not listening. He's not following instructions of handing over his cell phone. The officer starts pounding him in the back, having his face. If you go through all the videos, you'll see this. Then another police officer at that point is there. They pull him out of the car. And there's 4 police officers. Now, 4 men, police officers. One guy kicks him. You can see it from the videos. Another guy's hitting with a baton. And a lot of the body camera shot that I saw is covered up. Why is the body camera covered up with the jacket? That's kind of disturbing. You can hear all the stuff. This is about public safety. Is that public safety? Anyway, I was a EMT. I take things from a totally different perspective, I admit. If it was me, back in my days, we'd get 2-3 people. Person wasn't, working with me. You control him, you take it away. They didn't have to injure this young man. My understanding is he ended up with broken bones. He was using a blank gun in public, dumb. They charged him with concealed firearm. A blank gun is not a firearm. So to me, I'm just sitting here going, this is absolutely stupid. They should have, if you want to say, public disturbance, there's a dozen things they could have hit him with. Said they're trying to put him in jail for concealed carry and all this other kind of crap. Anyway, but I'd like to share this document. I'll have him send it to everybody. But I have seen misjustice from Macomb County time and time again. I had Rachel Rancilio try and set me up. I had Edwards Savito Jr. try and set me up in the court of law. I've had or seen different police officers lie in a stand. I'm sick of it. And then I read in the paper a week ago that a sheriff raped a woman in the Of course, this is all allegedly, and it goes in the FREEP, and he gets a misdemeanor. And there was quote-unquote penetration with digital. Penetration is always first degree. So what I have seen myself, and I wear a body camera because I don't trust any police officer. And from now on, I will call 911 if a police officer pulls me over. So I want the public to know I don't trust any of you. That is a scary thought when you guys are supposed to be the example. Eric Smith, I sued Eric Smith. He called in your lawyers to defend my personal lawsuit against Eric Smith.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, so if Eric Smith is using public resources for private use, I think that is also wrong. Anyway, you have the document. I appreciate your time. I wish we could have met on a much better situation or circumstances. I do agree with, supplying everything, the 911 and stuff like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else under public participation? Anyone else? Seeing no one else, thank you. We'll close public participation. Need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Duje, supported by Ha. All those please vote. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you.